Mechanic thinks I'm stupid because I'm a woman and scams me. So I humiliate him in front of customers. I, a 26-year-old female, do not look like I would know a single thing about cars. I'm 5'3" with long blonde hair, soft girly appearance, and an eternal baby face that makes me look like a 15 to 16-year-old. I drive a rather beat-up looking 2004 Avalon. My dad and brother are both mechanics. Not my profession, but I've learned a thing or seven from them, and I'm very comfortable working on cars. I'm only mentioning my appearance because it's pretty common for mechanics to assume that I'm an idiot about cars. A while back, I was pretty overwhelmed with life and didn't have a good space to do it, so I took my car in to get the oil changed. The place offered a free-of-charge head-to-toe inspection for any repairs that might need to be made. I knew that my car was fine. I'd pretty recently changed the air filter and brake pads. Rotors had maybe 40,000 miles on them and were in great condition. New serpentine belt, too. Literally just didn't feel like changing my oil, so I took it into the shop. Relevant notes, before I went to the shop, I actually checked my air filter and it was in fact pristine. Also, I usually call my dad while I'm working on my car so he can chat, and he knows about repair and maintenance I've done and that my car is well taken care of. After they changed my oil, the guy came back with the, quote, inspection results on a clipboard and was holding my air filter. He had this grave look on his face like something was wrong. Mind you, this was a very busy place and there were lots of customers in the waiting room. He told me that we needed to go over the results because my car was about to be completely broken down and also not safe to drive if I didn't get several repairs done ASAP because these were all completely shot. The repairs included new brake pads, new rotors, new calipers, to replace the serpentine and drive belt, a new air filter, new compressor or my AC won't work, which is a heavy threat in the middle of summer in Florida, and a couple more generic things. He showed me my air filter that was filled with dead grass, a dead wasp, some dirt, and hair. Bro, you really just scooped some bullcrap off the floor and put it in my new air filter to try and freak me out. The total? About $1,500 worth of work. It would be more expensive anywhere else, but he was willing to give you a deal. So, I immediately started buying myself time by asking basic questions that I knew he'd have to explain, so I could nod at him all wide-eyed while I came up with a good way to respond to what he was doing. What does a serpentine belt do? Is it important? Etc. I texted my dad. I'm calling in a sec, just play along, please. I told the guy, "Oh my god, that's so scary. I can't believe I was driving around like that. Thank you so much for caring. I don't have the money, so let me call my dad real quick to see if he can help me out. I can't afford this." I then proceeded to enhance my dramatic performance by even working up a tear while I called my father. The guy was standing there with me in front of all the customers. I put my phone on speaker and gave my dad a whole sob story about how much I need money again. I'm so sorry, can he help me? He asked what the repairs were and how much, and I said, "I don't know, but it sounds really bad. He says that it's dangerous, Daddy. I can't be without a car. What am I going to do?" Then I asked the guy to tell my dad what the repairs were. He rattles it all off, and my dad was playing his part perfectly. Oh, wow. Oh my goodness. I'm glad you caught this so she's not in danger anymore. Little did this scammer know, he was the one in danger. He hands the phone back and I drop the facade and I start laughing really hard. As soon as my dad hears me, he starts scream cackling into the phone. I said, "Dad, do you hear this bullcrap? Get this, he brought me my new air filter I just put in to show me how dirty it was. He pulled crap off the floor or something and rubbed it in there." Dad and I continued to crack up. The audience in the waiting room was also cracking up. Scammy McCanny was beet red and completely at a loss for words. Head down and some stuttering was his response. I handed him my air filter and told him to go vacuum it out and to make sure to let me see it before he put it back in. I sat and watched him put it back once it was clean, and also watched him pull my car out to make sure he didn't do anything horrible while I wasn't looking. I might have taken it a little far, but I really hate when mechanics take advantage of people who don't know anything about cars. So this felt like a massive win. Big props to my dad for his performance and for teaching me about cars. Big name places and nicer looking shops seem to be the worst culprits for this kind of thing. Find yourself a shop that's run down looking with good Google reviews from the locals. If you see a man wearing a ball cap with a fat dip in it, and his spitter within arm's reach, and a tattooed guy with a distended gut wearing a singlet and smoking a cigarette, you're at the right kind of shop. I should mention that to add injury to insult, I had a coupon and it was like $25. I'd already paid before he was done. The reaction from the audience was enough compensation for me. Did I go too far with my revenge? Should I have just told him to cut the crap and change my oil? Am I the jerk? Nah, the narrator thinks that if you're going to try and play this game with customers' goodwill and try to scam them out of thousands of dollars of their money, then you don't really get to complain when they drag you in front of all the other customers that you're also planning on taking advantage of. In fact, maybe some of them should be thanking the author. They're going to take everything that guy says with a marble-sized chunk of salt going forward. I do wonder if these professionals would target me, a slim, bespectacled man with my accent, with a similar level of customer disdain and try to wrangle me for more money. Maybe sound off in the comments and tell me if your trade would take someone like me for a ride given half a chance. Also, I love when people of a certain look or personality have an unexpected interest. Finding out that Bruce, the 150-kilo bouncer, is a king of karaoke, or that our petite blonde author is a pretty knowledgeable amateur mechanic, makes life just that little bit more fun and unpredictable, and it stops us from judging the various books of life from their covers. Also, the nerve of scooping filth from the ground and chucking it into your car parts. How do these guys feel good about what they do? There's kind of an unfair observation in the UK that being a mechanic means that most of your job is working out how much you can overcharge little old ladies by. I have to believe what the author says. There must be a few good, discreet little shops silently being honest and doing a good job out there. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked below. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Don't want to pay me for my full shift for 7 months? I'll get you fired then. So, this didn't happen to me, but to a friend of mine who works in a different department than me. They didn't want to post it, so I'm sharing it for them. Now, onto the story. It's a bit long, so bear with me. Essentially, this supervisor came into the department and was one of those who wanted to make a bunch of unnecessary changes and implement a host of tedious rules. He'd write people up for being a minute late, for performing a job in a way he didn't like, for breathing in the wrong direction. You get the idea. Anyways, the department he came into was staffed by very senior members who had been there so long that they were making more than him per hour. Our company has a union and they're all part of it. They'd been through their share of crappy supervisors. It's just a part of the job of the company we're at. Most of the supervisors are crappy because most of them are fairly young and this is their first big boy job, even if it is blue collar. These other supervisors had just kept their heads down and done the work, since none of them could afford to leave. Since these old union boys have been there so long, they immediately noticed when their pay stubs were smaller than before. The supervisor was paying them for an hour less than what they were actually working every single day that they worked. A lot of these guys were making $20 an hour or more, so that's 5 hours a week, ending up with them being underpaid by about $400 a month. Of course they were going to notice. I seriously have no idea how the supervisor thought he could get away with it. These guys, having worked together for so long, immediately came up with a plan. They decided to keep quiet. Let him continue shorting them until the moment was right, as they knew the company would be forced to pay them the missing time, some of it was overtime too, as well as a settlement to keep it out of court if they played their cards right. So they waited. They kept putting up with his crappy rules and attitude and said nothing. They knew the supervisor was trying to get promoted, which is why he'd been moved to their department in the first place. By underpaying them, he made himself look more productive with fewer hours needed. Of course, this made him look like a much better candidate. He kept up the annoying rules and jerk attitude the whole time, which only made revenge the sweeter. Everyone in the company knew he wanted the promotion that was coming up. He wouldn't shut up about it. In the break room, the office, everywhere. He told anyone who looked remotely alive and how he just knew I'm gonna get it. 7 months went by and the supervisor did get promoted, just like he said. That's the moment these guys chose to come forward, and it couldn't have played out more perfectly in their favor. Our company uses a time clock system and each employee has a badge they use to clock in. The supervisor finalizes the time cards in the computer and absolutely everything is tracked. Essentially, this supervisor was deleting their punch-in and starting them up an hour later every day for 7 months. Now, with our system, you can't just delete punches. You have to add comments because, like I said, everything is tracked. So this supervisor would pull bullcrap notes like 1, 2, 3, 4 or some other gibberish to put it through. Every department supervisor also has to keep track of a physical binder that records what the startup time for that night was supposed to be, so that if there's any issue, they can reference the book. So, when these guys came forward, it took less than 10 minutes of digging to pull up everything and see just how badly this guy had messed up. There was screaming, crying, a lot of apologies from the supervisor, but the damage was done. Our up-and-coming young guy was immediately fired, and now all the guys he screwed over were getting back pay plus overtime and a settlement. They didn't disclose how much, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was several thousand. In short, a supervisor underpays his employees for 7 months. The employees exact revenge by getting him fired after he gets promoted. They say that revenge is a dish best served cold, don't they? And this was a cold, icy, calculated move. This is actually so much more devastating than if they'd just got him fired or disciplined early on. They said nothing and let him get closer and closer to achieving his dreams. Heck, they let him touch his dreams before coming in, destroying his life, and taking home a fat paycheck to boot. Again, as a guy who's pro-union, I don't know if I approve of using them as a weapon to destroy a man's life and dreams, and to take way more money off the company instead of just calling in the union lawyer when they realized the problem and nipping it in the bud. It kind of feels like the company would have noticed that they deliberately delayed the union action in order to swipe more money for themselves. And this sort of thing probably is the reason that bosses in the States hate unions as much as they do. Unions should probably just be used to react and defend workers immediately rather than bide their time and damage companies as much as possible. But anyway, I don't like the sound of the supervisor and his crappy underhanded omissions of truth, so we'll call our union dudes jerk vigilantes. I think their actions were probably too calculated to be called a work for good, but this man certainly shouldn't be given a promotion for scamming his employees out of their money. Let's everyone not do this again and move on. Today I messed up by arriving to my mother's family dinner completely undressed. It's not often my family has get-togethers, as many of us live fairly far distances away, but it turns out everyone's schedules just kind of synced up for once. So my mother, being the kind soul that she is, invited all of us, me, my partner, and my brother and his partner, for a family dinner. Now, we live about 4 hours away by car, usually taking around 5 to get there, including toilet breaks, walking the dog, among other things. So, after the long drive, we arrived about 20 to 30 minutes before the dinner was to be served. So I decide I'm going to take a quick shower and then freshen up. This was my first mistake. My mother's house is reasonably small, with 1 bathroom, 2 bedrooms, but it's very homely and cozy. However, it's not the most, structurally sound building in the world. I finished my lovely warm shower and stood in front of the sink as I dried my body and started styling my hair and spraying deodorant. Here's my second mistake. I usually have music blasting while I shower and get ready. It's just something I've enjoyed, and I'd be lying if I said I wasn't getting in the dancing mood. As I start dancing around, I feel the floor start to creak. Bear in mind, I'm quite a large guy. And before I could even react, I fell straight through the floor down into the kitchen, where my mum, grandparents, and brother and his partner were all sat at the table waiting for food. I was damp, in pain, and smelled like a god, but also in quite the state of nature. The worst part? I broke my left ankle and couldn't stand up. I had to be helped to my feet by my brother and my partner, while my mother got me a towel to cover myself. I'm currently on the couch after a rather embarrassing trip to the hospital, trying to rest both my ego and my ankle. I'm sure it'll be a great story a year down the line, but in that moment I wanted to keep falling down to the Earth's core. In short, had a shower at my parents' house, fell through the weak floor, and landed au naturel in front of my family. Well, nobody here is the jerk unless your mother had the floors redone recently, because if she did, she needs to take whoever did the renovations to court. I can't imagine how painful and embarrassing this was, both at the time and in the weeks to come when you had to explain how you broke your ankle to your employers, among other people. But good gravy is it one funny story. I want a camera shot of your kitchen in the minute or so leading up to the moment where you 90-degree Kool-Aid manned your way into the kitchen.
Sweetie, can you take the potatoes off the stove for me?
Sure, Mom.
Are any of the kids allergic to any—
Crash!
Oh my God, Kevin!
Also, I've reread the title of this story, and you really decided to throw us a spoiler-free title, didn't you? If I were to look up synonyms for arrived, I'm fairly certain, in no thesaurus known to man, would I find fall with some velocity and impact from a recently self-made, non-framed entryway and impact the opposite surface in a destructive manner. You have my sympathy, author. But you're right, the story is hilarious and I hope you're able to laugh at it one day. Karen tries to cut in line at Disney. Sure, I'll get you kicked out right before we get in. A few years back, I was at Disney World with some friends. Disney had just opened up Pandora, the world of Avatar. Needless to say, the line for the flight of passage was insanely long and looped throughout the park. We got in line and waited about 2.5 hours. While we were standing there and chatting, this Karen sneaks in with her husband and 2 kids immediately in front of us. Her kids point out to her that this is not the beginning of the line, and she immediately shushes them and tells them that it's okay to cut the line because they have a flight to catch. The husband doesn't say a word. My friends were about to say something, but I immediately stopped them. My friends looked at me confused, to which I whisper, "Just watch and learn." We stood in line for about 45 more minutes until we were right at the entrance. That's when I decided to walk up to a security guard and told him that this lady cut us in line and refused to go back to the end. I told him that I didn't want to cause a ruckus, so I waited until I found him so he could talk to her. Sure enough, the guard walks up to her and says that she cut the line. She freaks out on him and says that she didn't and she's been standing in line for a while, and he proceeds to ask her how long she's been waiting, and she says over an hour, to which he replies that the wait for this ride is at least 3 hours, so you must have cut in. She was puzzled and frustrated, but realized she got caught, so she finally stops yelling and agrees to leave. As they escort her and her family out of line, I look at her and say with a nice smile on my face, "Have a safe flight." Then I look at my friends and tell them, "That's how it's done, boys." We still laugh about it once in a while. In short, Karen cuts in the line with her family. I made her wait for 45 minutes before getting her kicked out of the line. Am I the jerk for maximizing her punishment? Well, Karen definitely deserved that. I can't say the same about the kids. They gave her a chance to mend her ways, but then followed their guardian like good little tykes. The husband is definitely also a jerk. Just following orders doesn't get you off the punishment for this one, mate. I don't care how beaten down your spirit has gotten over however many years of marriage. So the kids missed out on a chance to get on a different ride because of mummy. But maybe that's just going to teach them the right lessons for later in life. I'll at least give her that she didn't kick up as much of a fuss as a whole bunch of other Karens we get on the channel, at least. We've seen a lot of them dragged kicking and screaming out of this sort of situation in the past, and even a few who've tried to call the cops and ended up getting a fine or jail time before. So this isn't the final boss sort of Karen. This is the villain that the heroes overcome in episode 1 of the Karen Slayers TV series, when they're still finding their feet. 4 out of 10 on the jerk scale, but a jerk nonetheless. I can't sleep in the same room as my boyfriend when I'm at your house? Fine, we won't sleep there. I was a recent college graduate who had made the immoral choice to move in with a boyfriend without getting married. We moved in together in another state, about a 6-hour drive from my parents, who lived about 2 hours away from the boyfriend's parents. When we came back to visit, my parents made us sleep in separate rooms and beds because we weren't married. After a visit or two like this, Christmas holiday rolled around. We were planning to be in the state for the whole week between Christmas and New Year's, splitting the time between the two families. We started by spending 2 nights at my parents', then around dinner time the 3rd day, we leave to head to his parents'. My parents are surprised and confused that we're not staying longer. They expected us to split the time evenly. My reply? Well, at his parents' house we get to sleep together, so we want to spend the night there. Bye. Before the next visit, they let us know that they've decided that since we're a committed couple, they will allow us to share a room even though we're not married. Also, in this time period, my sister and her girlfriend lived in my parents' house also and shared a room, despite there being 2 empty rooms. Once my parents finally realized they were dating, they'd known she was gay for years, they made them sleep in separate rooms. They moved out soon after. I kind of love the clueless parent not realizing that their kid is gay and not having a sleepover stereotype that these parents have apparently carried forward into the other daughter's early adulthood. So I'll say that, somewhat like the story before this one, we have a nice low-stakes jerk story. It's a nice break between the stories of the truly awful people we can sometimes read about. A swift point made and a lesson learned. If you want to see your kids, respect their life choices, as long as those choices aren't hurting them or anyone else. It sounds like they prioritized the company of their daughter over their beliefs about premarital whoopee. I hope they were similarly able to overcome any foibles they might have had about same-sex relationships. If so, they're merely flawed but loving parents, like most. Which honestly is refreshing given some of what the narrator has to read here. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. Or if you want to check out some great music, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, give Am I the Genius a shot. Everything linked in the description.